YouTube! What if I told you that some of America's top universities, including MIT and Harvard, conspired with the government to feed radioactive cereal to mentally disabled children? No consent, no parental notification, just a warm bowl of oats with a side of radiation. This isn't a sci-fi movie or some Cold War conspiracy theory. It actually happened. Today we're diving into one of the most disturbing, underreported experiments in U.S. history. The radiation studies at the Fernald State School. The Fernald State School in Waltham, Massachusetts looked like your typical early 20th century brick institution, but behind the iron gates was a grim reality. Founded in the 1800s, Fernald was originally a school for children with developmental disabilities. But by the mid-1900s, it had morphed into something closer to a prison or worse. Children were sent there for reasons ranging from mild learning disabilities to poverty or being orphaned. Some weren't even mentally ill at all, they just had nowhere else to go. And these children were the perfect test subjects. In the 1940s and 50s, researchers from MIT, backed by Harvard Medical School, partnered with the Atomic Energy Commission and Quaker Oats to study how the human body absorbs iron and calcium. The method feed radioactive isotopes, specifically iron-59 and calcium-45, to children at Fernald. But here's the most twisted part. They didn't tell the kids. Instead, they lured them into what they called a science club. Membership came with perks. You got extra snacks, field trips, and baseball games. All the kids had to do was eat some cereal. Cereal that was secretly laced with radioactive tracers. No consent forms, no parental permission, just poisoned breakfast. Dr. Clemens E. Benda supervised a series of experiments for the Fernald School. In 1953, Benda, who was a Harvard faculty member until the 1960s, wrote Fernald parents seeking permission to include their children in the experiments. One letter says the children had volunteered to participate in the tests. In another letter, Benda says the absence of consent by parents or guardians would be taken as an assumption that permission had been granted. However, Benda never mentioned that radioactivity would be used in the tests. So why radioactive cereal? The goal was to track nutrient absorption in the human body. Researchers believed that radioactive isotopes could act as a glowing breadcrumbs showing how iron and calcium move through the blood, bones, and organs. But why not test adults? Or at least volunteers? Because children were easier to control. And institutionalized kids were considered expendable. It was the dark logic of convenience. Scientists used children as young as 1 year old for these experiments to determine the human threshold for nuclear fallout. This wasn't some rogue experiment. It was officially sanctioned. The Atomic Energy Commission, yes, the same agency managing nuclear weapons, approved these studies. Why? Because understanding how radiation moved through the body could help soldiers survive nuclear fallout. So yes, in a roundabout way, these children were being used to simulate nuclear exposure. How much radiation were these kids exposed to? Not enough to kill them, but more than enough to potentially cause cancer, organ damage, or lifelong side effects. MIT stated that they used less than 1/billionth of an ounce of radioactive iron and calcium. The exposures to radiation for the use were between 30% and 99% below the much more stringent standards that are in effect today. Of course, no one tracked these kids into adulthood. Imagine that. Many of them only learned about the experiments decades later, when documents were unsealed in the 1990s. Some would describe symptoms like thyroid problems, chronic fatigue, tumors, and so on. But by then, the trail was cold, and most of the institutions involved claimed, "We didn't know better." How the heck do you not know better? Any decent adult would know that giving a child any form of radiation exposure was wrong. These people were disgusting at best. We all know they knew better. Informed consent was a known concept. These researchers just chose to ignore it. In 1994, President Bill Clinton ordered an investigation into Cold War human radiation experiments, including Fernald. The fallout was explosive. Documents revealed at least 1,400 Americans, many of them children, prisoners, or the poor, had been exposed to radiation without consent. In 1998, the Fernald victims reached a $1.85 million settlement with MIT and Quaker Oats, but the damage couldn't be undone. Surprisingly, MIT and Harvard admitted to no wrongdoing. You heard me correctly. No wrongdoing. They had their own internal investigation done and found that they had done nothing wrong. Their own people investigated them. Whatever. I can see it now. All these scientists standing around. We didn't do anything wrong. Some of the most disgusting acts I have ever heard of. How in the heck are these schools still open? You took in kids with disabilities and kids whose parents just couldn't properly take care of them, exposed them to radiation, and then have the audacity to sit there and say you didn't do anything wrong. This wasn't just a Fernald problem. Throughout the 20th century, the U.S. conducted dozens of unethical experiments, injecting plutonium into hospital patients, exposing soldiers to nuclear blasts, spraying entire cities with harmless chemicals, and always without consent. These cases force us to ask, how far are we willing to go in the name of science? And who pays the price when ethics are ignored? We should make these scientists sit in a chair and feed them some radiated cereal and see how they like it. Let's see if they still say that, oh, nothing's going to happen, everything will be fine years down the road. And I'm not just talking about one time. Let's make them sit down for a few months and do this and see if they keep that same energy. You know what I'm saying? The Fernald experiments are a chilling reminder that even the most prestigious institutions can commit horrors when they're unchecked and unaccountable. These weren't Nazis or war criminals. These were American scientists backed by Ivy League schools, corporations, and our amazing government. So the next time you hear about an ethics violation, remember, sometimes it's more than just red tape. It's someone's life. I am Cheap. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe, and all that good jazz. If you'd like to support the channel further, consider becoming a member. With all that said, we'll catch you in the next one.